Welcome to Chasing Rings Overtime. These fast break episodes are an extension of the main show, delivering quick-hitting takes, bold opinions, and analysis on the biggest stories and topics across sports. While we remain rooted in football year-round, Overtime expands our lens to cover everything happening across the sports world. We will return for a second season of full-length episodes in July as we ramp up for complete NCAA football and NFL coverage in preparation for the 2026 seasons. Until then, let's go. This is Chasing Rings Overtime. Welcome back to Chasing Rings Overtime. Big dude, how are you feeling tonight, my friend?
Feeling good. Can't complain at all. Feeling like $100 million, as they would say now.
That's what's up. That's always good, man. So we're going to jump right in as we usually do. Yesterday, Nick Saban appeared on Capitol Hill to articulate his support for the Protect College Sports Act, which we've talked about on a couple of episodes now, and that's certainly hot in the news today as people look to see what they can do to quote unquote fix college sports that has become this runaway train. He certainly was super supportive of the act, but he admitted that it wasn't a perfect bill by far, but that the general premise of it, he thought, could bring college sports back to where it needs to be and could stop the relentless transferring that we're seeing, the continuous lawsuits about eligibility as a primary variable. But Big Dude, what are your thoughts on Saban's view and in general? And we can break down bits and pieces of this bill again. I certainly have some thoughts on some things. I don't think it's a perfect bill by any means either, but I think it has some good elements to it. What are your thoughts on Saban's voice in this and his perspective on it?
Well, and listening to Saban and being a former student athlete myself at Penn State, it was a different era. But so much has happened since 2021. I think where Nick Saban talks about all these other things that can be changes in getting this whole thing under control for college athletics and bringing back the purity of it. I'm not so sure that it was pure to begin with. Okay, I will say that because one of the issues that I have with the bill, and I understand that there's a good structure with the bill. It's very good structure, but how are you going to start all these different things that you're doing? There's a court case that has been passed, the NCAA versus the court decision before that gave everybody $20 million. And then Saban says that he doesn't believe there should be a pay-for-play thing. I don't know how he could say that, with all these years of discussion. Let me just kind of, and I know I went way back before, but let me get more recent with Kane Coulter, back in the early 2010s, and a gentleman from UCLA, Huma, the former linebacker, who's now doing all this professionally. They wanted to talk about, and talk to labor unions, the NLRB, and all the rest of those different constituencies and entities, that this is no longer the NCAA, especially NCAA and all those sports. It's no longer, they are, no doubt, employees. They put the time in. They try to limit it to 20 hours a week. It just doesn't work out that way. And one of the things that this bill does not discuss, and this is where I am a little disappointed with Coach Saban, because he mentioned everything about bringing back the players and the people who've graduated. This bill does not talk about the effect that coaches who, because of their likeness and their image and their lawyers and their agents, how much they're affecting all the parts of the schools, as bad as things are in the United States with colleges and universities closing. And the NCAA and a lot of these other things that have come through, they're a lot of times, this NIL thing is the last hope for a lot of these different schools financially. Some pretty big schools, too, aren't doing as well. They don't have the same type of enrollment, and this is what it is that kind of starts the enrollment. that starts and nurtures the good seed, not just from the money standpoint, but from all the environment and all the schools together. Those salaries that the coaches got all those years, especially from Saban, the players could not get anything. They couldn't have agents. Coaches could have agents, and then you had coaches like Saban that had $8 million a year, that he was able to get, and he didn't get paid by. They say, well, he didn't get paid by the school or the NCAA. It's a corporation. Well, guess what? He said there should have been no collective. Well, tell me what Dr. Pepper is or some of these other organizations. They're all collectives because they're all connected to the school, and that's how they were able to get the salaries paid for. So he said he agreed with names, images, and likenesses. I'm glad he said that because it should have been happening. But to quit, and he kind of really outed himself by saying he was only going to quit, that it was so much. To me, it didn't seem like for him that he could keep up with the competition of the money, because if you're the coach you say you are, you can change with times and you can still get that quality athlete about why you go to the University of Alabama and why you'll go to our program. You still can have an effect on it. So maybe it was a good time for him to quit. I did not agree with him on not having collectives, because what we're seeing today is, and I agree with just about, not much with him, but I do agree on the transfer part. But I disagree with the fact that he's saying this is not a pay for play, because it indeed is.
Can you repeat that last part, Big Dude? Your mic went out right before the pay for play piece.
Yeah, I don't agree with him that this is not a pay for play situation, because it indeed is.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I think I'm with you, and I know that G, who couldn't join us tonight, may pop on later. I think all of us are in agreement about this coaches piece of it. And I want to go back to college basketball for a quick minute and then come back to this. I don't know if many people remember Sonny Vaccaro, who was the legendary sports marketing exec, who basically got into the practice of college basketball coaches getting contracts with all of the shoe companies. He really started in the late 70s, but it really evolved in the 80s, where you had coaches who had contracts with Nike and Adidas and companies like that for their teams to be outfitted in those specific companies' gear. And I know the big uproar at the time was that, well, the coaches are able to go out and cut these side deals with these, how will I call it, program adjacent entities, but the players get nothing from it, right?
That's
and
right.
I think we're going to today, I think we're still at that point. I'm with you, Big Dude. I agree with a lot of what's in this bill, but to me, there's just not enough with regards to the coaches. It's like you wanted to limit athletes' freedom. The student athletes' freedom has always been limited. Now they actually have a voice in this thing, so to speak, where they're able to go capitalize. And, it is pay for play, whatever you want to call it. It is pay for play. But the athletes are now the ones that seem to be taking advantage of this moment. And the coaches and the adults in the room, quote unquote, don't like it very much, because it was fine for the last 50 years when the coaches were benefiting from it. I mean, if you look at a lot of the state schools, especially, and I'll use Nick Saban as an example, coaches, college football coach or the college basketball coach is the highest paid employee in some of these states.
Yes.
Now, with all of the issues that we have, and I don't want to get too political, but with all the issues that we have going on nationally and locally at the state levels, how in the world can a coach of a sport be your highest paid employee? So I think for me, the sticking point, and we'll delve into some of the major elements of this bill, how can you focus so much on the athlete and, Saban insinuating bringing it back to where basically the athletes, he didn't say nothing. He said that they could capitalize off their name, image, and likeness. However, he doesn't want it to see the specific form that it's in today. And I don't disagree with him. I think it
Hmm.
totally got out of control. I
Hmm.
always thought athletes should get some type of compensation. This is
Yeah.
not what I had in mind.
No, no.
This has gone off the rails. But we're gonna lead into this coaching element of it, but I want to kind of dig through each of them to get your thoughts on it, big dude.
Okay.
The limiting athletes to transferring schools only one time without penalty. What are your thoughts on that? So one time transfer, no penalty. Anything after that, it's a penalty.
I don't agree because no one knows how that's going to go. There's still too many freedoms, and there's still not enough structure. If there was a lot of structure with the transfer portal, the only thing they really changed with the transfer portal are the amount of times that you could be in it and the dates. There were all these other times you could do it. All they've really done is restricted the time you could do it. There's no elements to the method really in which you must recruit to someone. I mean, still, if you have an agent, if I have an agent, maybe I'm not involved with talking to the coach, but my agent is involved with talking to someone from the university and finding out some things. Or by the time you get there, you have a certain expectation of really the campus, and maybe things don't go quite as well. How many coaches have been bought out lately? There's coaches that are leaving. Of course, that you can't leave during the season, but you find out information about whether you're going to keep your coach for next year. Maybe those are the circumstances that you came under. I certainly don't think it should be more than two, because if you keep it to one, we're going to stay in court. That was the one thing that he talked about, and some of the other folks. If you keep it to one, you're asking yourself for more court cases, because there's more reasons why people should transfer. And I don't think that there's enough structure in the transfer portal to keep it to one. I mean, I agree that it got out of control, but everybody has to understand why it did, because the compensation wasn't taken care of. The transfer portal thing came underneath all the guise of all the compensation, and now they want to pull it back. It's like milking a cow and putting the milk back in a cow. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's already happened. So one time, there are too many circumstances, and the student athletes, they represent themselves, especially if you have an image and likeness that has to do with another university. Maybe the university is not supporting you like you need for image and likeness, and as long as you have it, whether it's third party or whether it's collective, you want to stay at that particular university. But this whole issue of them only having one place to transfer to, one time, I should say, I don't think that's quite enough. And I think because we saw like the Brandon Sorsby thing, I thought that was a lot. That he goes to from Indiana to Cincinnati to Texas. Maybe that's about enough, but it's enough where maybe we can find out something. One transfer person may quit. He mentioned something that, hey, 25-30% of the people don't do anything in the transfer portal because the coach is telling you that. But you still have to have a chance, I think, to find a program that's the best program for you. And I'm not so sure one is enough for that.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is the language around it. He made a great point when he said that and I don't know if this is a genuine concern or not. Of course, when you want to make your case for something, you can pull any example to support it. It's like using statistics to prove your point. But one of the things he mentioned, which is true, that when you start getting into multiple transfers, it certainly limits your ability to graduate. Certainly, you're not graduating on time. And I totally agree with him on that. And that would be the case for any college student that transfers multiple times. All credits don't always transfer. Some schools only take up to so many credits. And he made a point that we were obsessed with student athlete graduation rates years ago. We have improved them significantly, and that this gets us back to a point where we are going to go back to low student athlete graduation numbers, which I think that's a potential. I mean, we haven't seen any data on it yet. I mean, we just had, who was that? I know James Cook just graduated from Georgia. during this off season. I feel like somebody else had also graduated. So athletes are still going back and getting their degrees. They may not be doing it when we, the adults in the room again, want them to, but they're eventually getting their degrees. But I do have some concern about the one-time transfer. And I've been going back and forth with this. I'm usually pretty definitive once I make a decision on what I believe, but this has really had me going back and forth. I get trying to limit the transfer to one time, and on paper, that may seem like a good fix, but there are so many variables that go into any young adult picking a college. And part of our background in higher education is knowing that when you bring these young adults to your campuses, a big piece of their success is going to be their sense of belonging on that college
Absolutely.
campus.
Big
And
time.
now you're talking about a student, and I'm going to drop that athlete for a second, but a student who happens to participate in athletics, whose time is very much different than your regular college student coming on the campus. So my time is structured for me. I don't get to decide what things I want to be involved in, who my peer group is for the most part. And those are the things that impact that sense of belonging, right? So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility and I would love to see some data on this, for student athletes maybe looking at that transfer variable a little bit more closely than your regular student, perhaps, just because nobody knows when they pick a college if that's the place for them. You got
That's
to
right.
go there. You have to get immersed in the environment. And when you're in such a structured environment, you don't really get to explore everything that college could possibly give you to establish that sense, right? So
Yeah.
that's one with the transfer situation. Two, and I've been having this debate with a few people offline. The hardship cases. And I know that one of the things we want to eliminate is all of the lawsuits. And I think the viewpoint is, if you only allow one transfer and you're so finite, you eliminate those lawsuits. But I'm not of the school of thought that you can do that, because we've seen a lot of athletes over time where they might have a sick family member, or they themselves may have something that extends beyond a traditional medical red shirt that requires them to leave, right? And I think that you should be able to present a case for that. That's how it used to be. If you remember back in the day, somebody
Yeah.
wanted to transfer, we've always heard this word hardship. As kids, I didn't really know what that meant. But you get older and you're like, oh, okay, it's like a hardship case. I get it. I think that if you write the language appropriately, that what qualifies as a hardship, and that what documentation is needed, because we've seen in a few of these eligibility and transfer lawsuits that there were parties claiming that they didn't have correct documentation, and the student athlete claiming they did have the documentation. So I think that this is all in how the rules may be written at the end of the day. I don't know if it being one or multiple transfers necessarily being the issue. I think it might be how the language is written. We have to be very finite in what the parameters are going to be for someone to be able to transfer. Should there be a limitation on it? I think you're kind of taking the humanity out of it, because you don't know what direction one of these student athletes' life is going to go that may require them to. Now, having said that, perhaps there's okay, my guy, you transferred twice now.
Right.
Maybe that's the point where you say, okay, you just end up if you transfer again, you basically you lose that year of eligibility. You don't get it back, and you don't get the red shirt, and that just counts as part of your eligibility, which takes me into the next point of this: a maximum of 5 years eligibility. And we know that this is certainly coming from having guys and women who are almost 30 years old playing college sports. Now, what are your thoughts on a 5-year eligibility limit?
I
And
think that's about as
COVID's really the reason for this, but go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And COVID was the beginning of it. I think that's probably close to about as on point as I am with him, Coach Saban, on this, because when you have it and you have a college career, you try to get as much done as you can. Very few people I know of got that 6 year. And again, when you look at it, it's difficult to limit it in certain ways, but you didn't have 5 years before. You had 4 and you had to redshirt a year. Now that you don't have to do that, I think 5 makes a lot more sense to allow for a number of things that could come up with family and that can come up with other types of hardship. Because when we start talking about and use the word hardship, especially when we start talking about transfers, you remember they gave you before you had to sit out in Division I, you had to sit out a whole year. That's what people didn't want to do. I had some friends that were going to transfer. I even thought about it at one time. I said, I don't know if I like what's going on. They said, yeah, and that's what people used to say. You'll be 24 years old, man, and you should be in grad school. That's what one person told me. And I said, I should be in grad school. And I never thought about that. There wasn't a whole lot of honor with being 24 years old and being on a team. Now it's become the norm. So I understand what he's saying. 5 years and without a redshirt year is fine. I guess the one part that I'm not sure I agree with him on, because it's kind of like, I think he kind of crossed it when he said he thought people who are going to those like JUCOs and all, that those years shouldn't count against them. So if those years don't count against them, you're back to the 25-year-old player again.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. He said that in the prep schools. And I'm thinking, well, how are you avoiding a 24, 25-year-old student athlete then?
There's no way to do it. So my thing is, irrespective of the age, and I think it will take another 5 years to figure out how this post-COVID world works, because now people may have different priorities. And now, everybody just doesn't want to miss out on the money because they know that the chances of making in the NFL are small. But guess what, though? 5 years, I think, is about enough time that you give the university before you give someone else. So that, to me, that $20.5 million that folks are getting from revenue sharing, to me, it's fair to do 5 years. You can't get more fair than that when you look at what compensation they're receiving, and they can go on their own, go into the NFL and get another company to sponsor you after your 5 years. If you can't come for a 6, see if the NIL collective, see if they're going to support you as they do with the Olympics. You got people who are different companies supporting people going into the Olympics and paying for all their expenses. To me, that's the way to go on that. On that, I agree with Coach Saban.
Yeah, for me, the only problem I have with that is that 5 seems to be arbitrary, because when we look at statistics on college students in general, and we look at graduation and retention rates, it's always 4-year and 6-year graduation rates.
That's correct.
I would like to see it be a 6-year cap if we're going to put a cap on it. And that, I think, it also, depending on how you write up the transfer rule, it also gives you a little bit more wiggle room for somebody that maybe does end up with a 2 transfer situation. You're still getting a solid 4 additional years to, whatever your case is. Maybe you weren't playing or you had a personal situation, whatever the case is as to why you're transferring. It still leaves you 4 years to play with. Now, just an asterisk by this, I think one of the big things is the I'm going pro syndrome, because I think not only are we looking at the bag that the athletes are getting, don't forget that a lot of these athletes, a lot of them are transferring because they're trying to play as well. That's kind of that forgotten group. We're focused on the money grab, which is very real. Guys are definitely jumping ship for a bigger bag, but you're also having guys that, I want to play. So I am trying to transfer to go someplace where I can play. It just so happens that the bag is real sweet right now to do that. So that's interesting. As we near the end of the show, I want to make sure we get to this coaching situation. This is the one that I have a real problem with, and I don't know if they're going to be able to fix it. As they've written it, it prohibits schools from poaching a coach from another school during the season. I don't know how you get around that. If I'm trying to hire somebody to run my program for the next season, the way the sports cycle runs, how can I not have had a conversation with them before this season ends? And let's take the worst case scenario. You take Indiana and Miami were in the championship game. Let's say that somebody wanted to hire Miami's coach, right? But I can't talk to him until the middle of January.
That's crazy.
And all of this, the portal's open. I can't recruit it, so I'm going to be late in recruiting. You're not that far from spring practice. That's the one that I have a problem with. But I also don't feel like there is enough to limit what the coaches have been doing, because I'm probably one of the few people that's a Lane Kiffin fan. I know, don't hold it against me, everybody, but I just don't like the way that he moves. That's one thing I don't like just jumping ship like that. And you have made promises when you come into these families' homes about what you're going to offer their child when they come to your school. You're there to convince them, and then you basically leave them high and dry. And there's no penalty for coaches. And in fact, you touched on it earlier, big dude. They get their contract bought out. I mean, look at Brian Kelly. Did a terrible job at LSU. And you end up being a millionaire off of it. He ended up pretty much getting fired, but he did Notre Dame. He left Notre Dame high and dry. So what's your thoughts on what else could be done to hold coaches to the fire the way that we're trying to hold athletes to the fire in this so-called fixing college sports?
Well, I mean, I like I said, I agree with you first, and I'll try to, keep it succinct. But it is a known thing that, who the universities and all those other folks want. They want to win. They want to win. I don't think there's any way of stopping the communication. I think part of what can be doing is I think that I don't see any coaches, especially to do something with it. It should cost them something extra. They should get fined. There should be a heavy fine for you doing that if they find out that you're doing that and you're not looking at the well-being of your team. I think that's the biggest thing and that's what Saban was trying to say, that there's so much to be, but he didn't spell it all out. There's so much to be done with the well-being, even beyond graduation. You got to look at your team's well-being. You can't stop anyone from doing it, but anything that's unethical, anything that's ever done shady with an agent. And I think they said 5%, I think was the other thing, 5% for agents, for players. Why not coaches? What's the limit for coaches? I think when you look at all those different lines and all those different things that are going on and all those, I think there needs to be some more ethical things for coaches. And I think the other thing is the NCAA needs to take some of their legislation and then some of their things that it really has been created, and they need to tear it up and they need to relook at it, because what's happening is everything is sitting at Congress and they're making all the decisions. The NCAA, they have all these people. I watched one of their panels. Everybody's sitting on there from different conferences, Big Sky and all of them. Nobody from the NCAA is even on a panel. So no one respects their voice. So the number one thing is the NCAA needs it, and as much as I could care less, the NCAA needs their voice back, and they need to take a look more about where the coaches' ethical bounds are and all these other types of things. Because as much as Saban talked about it, he still benefited. He never said he didn't. So we can't get on the coaches for benefiting that and using good gamesmanship with their agents. But we can take a look at how much further they go, bothering people that are on campus, talking to players before they go into the portal and things like that. I think if you're found and you're talking to people before they go into the portal, you're setting something up or you're going through a third party to do it, you should be heavily fined. When you start hitting people's pocketbooks, things start to get real.
Yeah, and you brought up something that I wasn't even thinking about when I posed. That is the coaches tampering. So I think that there's multiple layers here to coaches. I just don't like the fact that there's no repercussion for coaches just leaving programs high and dry. We've gone from the student athlete, oh, you want to leave, you got to sit out a year. Now we want to police how many times you can transfer.
Right.
It's always penalizing the athlete, but no penalty for coaches. And don't get me wrong, if you look at it at basic employment, I should be able to leave a job when I want to leave it, give my notice, whatever the standard is for a particular industry. But I think coaching is a little bit different because of the impact that it has for the entire ecosystem. You can't, and I don't know if you can do anything about it, because certainly I think college sports, especially the revenue sports, have always worked kind of through the back door, right? like Ed Orgeron, the former LSU head coach,
Yeah,
now assistant again. I love his quote that the only difference is we used to bring the money through the family's back door. Now we just come through the front door with it.
that's
And I
right.
think that
That's
college
right.
sports is probably always going to have that stench to it. I think it's kind of
Yeah.
too late. It's always been an element of it. There've always been rules, right? But it hasn't stopped anybody from the backdoor deals, and I don't think it's going to. I just would like to see some more repercussions specific to coaches who jump ship.
So would I.
um, I don't know how in an industry where I don't know how an industry like that you can wait until a coach's season's done to talk to them about a job for the following year, because whether people realize it or not, we might be in the football off season, but there is no off season, especially for the
Never.
coach. So, but what I would like to see, I really wanted Lane Kiffin to coach the Ole Miss team, and I know that that's a tough situation to navigate when your players know that you're leaving. Potentially any of those playoff games could have been his last game, but I don't think you get to leave a team in mid-season, end of season, or whatever. If you have a contract to coach that team, whether you're going to get another job or not, you finish that job. It's just like anything else. Most companies are going to take a 2-week notice, and typically for 2 weeks, you're closing out whatever projects or whatever you have going on in that particular job. And I think coaching should kind of be treated the same way. I know we're going to continue these conversations because I think things are just going to heat up as we get closer to the college football season and to whatever this resolution is going to be. But thank you once again for joining us on Chasing Rings. And until next time, don't forget to follow us on all the major streaming platforms. Follow, like, subscribe. And until next time, see ya later.